Okay, we are back for another episode of Perspective on Athletics, and today we have Dr. Daryl Arroyo. And Daryl is the athletic director at San Joaquin Delta College, a community college in California. Daryl, I really appreciate you taking time and joining us today.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to talking to you.
Well, it's great to see you again. We've known each other for a few years now, and it's you're in your new position at San Joaquin Delta, and we want to learn more about that. But we're going to talk about some very interesting things, I think, related to athletic careers and transition and changing jobs and moving along in your career path. But before we do that, we need to learn a little bit more about you and where you have come from. So can you give us a brief sketch of your career track and where you started and how you ended up at San Joaquin Delta?
Okay, so the life story, I guess.
The abridged version.
Yes, I'll make it abridged. My career started basically. I was a wrestler in college and high school, and I ended up. I spent 6 years assistant coaching, working on my master's degree, and starting to work on my doctorate degree. My first full-time head coaching job was at Springfield College as a faculty member in physical education and as a head wrestling coach. And I spent 21 years at Springfield. It's actually my alma mater. That's where I did my undergrad work. So I took over from my old coach when he retired, my old college coach. And I was there 21 years, again, teaching physical education, coaching wrestling. My last 3.5 years at the college, I was chair of the phys ed department, or physical education and health education department. Okay. And continuing coaching for those last 3.5 years. That was a hectic 3.5 years. And then I ended up leaving Springfield College for my first AD job, and that was at Alfred State College in Western New York, a state university SUNY school. And I spent a couple years at Alfred State, and while I was there, I basically helped to transition that athletic department from an NJCAA association to NCAA Division III, and they're just finished their first provisional year in NCAA Division III this year. Yeah. And I've been here at San Joaquin Delta in Northern California. Stockton is the town that we're in. And I've been here since October. Okay. Yeah, so about 10 months on the job here.
Great. So you've been from coast to coast in a variety yes. of capacities. And, what's interesting is, like many athletic directors, I think you started through the coaching ranks, mm-hmm. and you coached for many, many years. And at what point was it an original aspiration to become an administrator and become an athletic director, or how did that evolve for you?
That's a good question. I remember when I first got the job at Springfield, I was maybe a couple years into it, and my wife's grandmother asked me, well, when do you want to be an athletic director? I was like, oh no, God, I don't want to be an athletic director. You know what I mean? I just want to, I'll coach, and then at some point maybe I'll just phase out of coaching and into teaching through retirement. But no, it didn't work out that way, and I'm happy the way it's worked out. But originally it wasn't an original aspiration. No, it kind of grew as time went on.
Right. Yeah. And I know earlier in your career you mentioned at Springfield you were teaching a lot. And how does that all fit in? I mean, it seems like that's a busy job to be a head coach, some administrative work, and then to have a teaching load on top of that. And I know Springfield is has a great program, so I think most of their coaches are teaching. But how does teaching fit into this whole athletics world, both from an administrator standpoint, but also a coach's standpoint?
Yeah, well, it's kind of I think in some way it's kind of an older model. But that's the way athletics was initially on. Coaches were teaching physical education and coaching their athletic teams. You still see it more in Division III. At the Division III level, there's more of that than there is. You don't see it much Division I level anymore. They're just coaching, they're recruiting, they're fundraising, they're doing what they need to do. It's a different environment. Interestingly, though, that Springfield has that teacher coach model, and I don't see that changing much. In fact, they were encouraging the coaches. When I got the job at Springfield, the position was master's required, doctorate preferred for a wrestling coaching position. You know what I mean? So it was really the academic side of it is very important at Springfield, and it's a big phys ed school, and that type of thing. And interestingly, in the 3C2A system, it's also that teacher coach model. Our coaches are all faculty here. Yeah. So they're teaching and coaching. In fact, the practices here in the 3C2A are classes. Huh. They're an actual class for 2 hours long. So it's not like in the Division III where everybody was practicing, at 4:30. No, I have teams practicing at 12:30 because their class is 12:30 to 2:30, and that's when they practice.
Yeah.
So it's nice because I'm familiar with that teacher coach model.
Right.
And so it fits me well stepping into this system.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I was curious your thoughts on that. And now you're in a situation kind of back to that teacher coach model. But that brings us kind of to the topic that we want to talk about today, which is really transitions. And, it's one thing to transition from one job to the next, and whether that's one Division III institution to another Division III institution, or even within the NCAA, there are some similarities, I suppose. You've been through a few different significant transitions, like you mentioned, a Division III institution to an NCJAA that was transitioning into Division III, and now you're back at a community college level, yet in California, which kind of has its own community college system and association. So that has to be full of both challenges and, I'm sure, opportunities. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about how that has been and gone for you?
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting ride, and it's kept me pretty busy. Not that I think, but I'm enjoying it. I think that what I want to talk about today are just some things that, because I've done it in basically in the last 3 years, I've transitioned into 2 different jobs, and if you actually go back a couple years, I transitioned into the chair job at Springfield also. But I'm going to focus more on the transition into an athletic director role and some of the things that I've learned from kind of both of my transitions here that may assist other people doing that, making those transitions. And the first thing I wanted to chat about is what I call like the honeymoon period. And I didn't really recognize this so much at Alfred State because it was, you just my first time in it. But then here, the same kind of things occurred, and then that what I call that honeymoon period, like the first couple months, I guess, of the job. The first thing, which is kind of nice, is you're not as busy as you think you're going to be for that first couple of months, because you don't know how to do anything yet. Okay, you don't know your people that well. You're still trying to figure out the software, how the budget works, and that type of stuff. So you end up, you're running around all doing things during the day, but then you're like, okay, what work am I going to bring home? And you oftentimes don't have work to bring home because you haven't figured out how to do that work yet. So you're learning a lot, but it's not as busy. It's weird because I came from Alfred. I was always bringing work home. And then I'm here for the first few weeks. I'm like, I don't seem to have work to bring home yet. I'm not accomplishing things, So it was a little different, but you're going to find that period. Now, when I looked back at Alfred, it definitely occurred there too. I remember it seemed really easy early on, and then, things got busy.
Right.
So that's that's one of the things to be aware of. Don't get complacent. Don't get, this isn't too bad, because it's going to kick in.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me interject. I think that's a great point, and I certainly have been through that, and I'm sure others can relate as well. But Alfred State was your first athletic director job, and it's the first time you're in that chair. That must have been full of some additional anxieties or anticipations or uncertainties, right? Talk about that for just a second. What was it like being the AD for the first time?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was an interesting thing. I think one of the things that helped me a little bit is that I'd been a department chair, and as a department chair, I was working 75% of the faculty were coaches. Okay. So I was had worked with the coaches. So I'd been in a supervisory position over coaches, more on the academic side of things than the athletic side, but still, I think that helped me to transition into the AD role a little more easily and quickly on that type of thing. It was, going back to the chair thing, it was a bigger jump there. One of the things that I found out is that I'd been at Springfield 21 years, and most of those coaches that I ended up being the chair for, I had known that whole time. Most of them had been there that whole time, or a large percentage of that. But it was nice because I really felt like that last few years at Springfield, I really got to know those people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They weren't just someone I chatted with at the department meeting, you know what I mean, and then didn't see again. I was having evaluation meetings with them, and they were coming to me with their issues and concerns. So you really, that's one of the things you find out is you really get to know the people that you're working with. As a coach, you think you know your colleagues, but you don't know them as well. When you become their boss, you really get to know those people, and that's usually a good thing.
Right. So you've got this honeymoon period that you talked about, and that sounds like an interesting time zone for some people. What happens next? What's next?
Well, I'm going to mention one more thing about the honeymoon thing. Yeah. The other thing that I found that happened is that when you think about honeymoon, you think about this. It's early on. A lot of the people around you, your staff, your faculty, even your boss, they're not going to tell you a lot of negatives early on. Okay, after your first couple of weeks, this place is great. Everything's wonderful at Shangri-La. It's every place has their issues and concerns. They just don't want to throw those at you those first few weeks. So keep your eyes peeled for the issues and concerns and things that'll come up, and gradually those will come out, and you'll get to you'll get to figure them out. And they're going to be everywhere. There's going to be some obstacles and things, but I found that it was like early on, it's kind of a little Pollyanna-ish.
Sure.
And then that's not saying anything bad about the place. I think that people are generally like that. You start dating someone, right? And everything's great. And then you find out more about them as time goes on. So it's a little like that, I think.
Sure.
But I think the other thing that I found is just you need to be, when you step into a new position, other than that little honeymoon period, you need to be ready to work your butt up. It's going to be very hectic. You're going to have a lot of work. There's a lot to do. No matter how well set up you are when you step into that, just getting to know people and know the system. There's going to be a lot of work. We talk about work-life balance. I think when you step into a new position, you need to be prepared that it's not going to be that balanced for the first year or so. Okay, it's going to be skewed more towards the work, and most people stepping into an AD job are going to want that. They want to transition into things as quickly as they can, and they know they're going to need to put in the time to do that. But it's there's a lot to kind of look at around that whole type of the time thing. Yeah. For example, I never drank coffee as a coach, hardly ever. Once in a while, taking a late night van ride back from a competition. I now have an espresso machine at my house. Okay. So, there's more to do. So when I get home, I may have to work on the budget, and I'm a little tired from a long day, and I'm going to drink a cup of espresso, and I'm going to get that budget thing done that I need to get done. Yeah. So it's, the idea of you're going to be taking work home. And I think along that line, you need to recognize that you can try to do some of that stuff at the office. I've found that a big project, if you're working on the budget, if you're updating the department manual, those type of things, you're not going to get that done in your office, unless everybody's hiding from you for some reason. But I won't lock myself in my office to get 2 hours of work done. The door is open, and there's going to be coaches, there's going to be student athletes, parents, somebody coming in to talk to me. Yeah. So I don't even attempt to get a lot of that stuff done at the office. At the office, I'm dealing with emails, dealing with calls, putting out this fire, that fire. Yeah. The bigger projects, I tend to bring home. Yeah. I think that's just the way, and you need to be ready to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what has been, as you've wrapped up your first year at San Joaquin Delta College now, you've kind of had a little bit of time, hopefully, to reflect. What were some of the things that have appeared to you that moving from that Pollyanna stage, the honeymoon stage, to the reality stage, what has been maybe the most significant challenge you've had to deal with in year one?
That's a good question. See, I think part of it really was wrapping my head around the 3C2A regulations and rules and some of the changes that have come in. Had some familiarity with the 3C2A system. I got my grad degree out in California, and I'd interviewed at some other institutions before I landed here at Delta. But there was a lot more to learn. I found it was a harder transition just rule-wise to the 3C2A than it was to the NJCAA. When I went from Division III to NJCAA, I learned the NJCAA wasn't as difficult, wasn't as complicated to wrap my head around that one. 3C2A took a lot more time. And there were some new regulations that had recently come in that I think all the ADs were still trying to wrap their heads around. So that was good, because early on I was like, this is driving. I'm not sure how this is supposed to work and how we're supposed to calculate. We have out of season hours, how we calculate the time you can spend out of season with the student athletes. It's called CARAs, or abbreviation. It's accountable athletic related activities. But trying to wrap my head around that. But then I went to the first convention in the fall, and I realized a lot of the other ADs are still trying to figure it out too. So I didn't feel so bad. But that one took a while, and just learning all the rules and regulations of the association. Sure. One of the things that they did here, which was really nice, is I was provided a mentor in the conference. Oh. Nice. Okay, so they gave me an AD in the conference as my mentor to help me kind of transition. So that was, I think, a real positive thing. So if someone's stepping in a new job, if you don't get that and you're in a conference, right, you may want to ask the president, hey, can I get assigned a mentor, right, that's someone I can bounce things off of when I'm having difficulty? And I also was assigned here at Delta a mentor, a manager. So if you're not, basically, president, VPs, and then managers are the next level here at Delta. And I was assigned another manager, outside of our area, as a mentor, someone who had been here a while, and actually that mentor had actually spent some time doing some coaching here in the past too. So it was good, but it was nice to kind of have those right away. I was given those mentors in my first week on the job.
Well, that seems like that would be a critical way to help ease the transition into any new situation.
Yeah. You try not to bug them too much, but it's nice to have them there. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So if you're stepping in a new job and you don't get that, it may be something to talk to your conference people about or your supervisor about.
Right. Great idea. And I'm sorry, I threw in a question that may have disrupted your flow.
No.
Where do you go next as you think about these transitions?
Well, we're talking about the time that you're going to put in, and just some of this stuff is simple and people do it, but I'm going to talk about some things that I do to help me to be more efficient. I thought I was busy when I was a coach until I moved into, administration, and there's a lot to balance and a lot to take care of. And one of the big things is emails. Just keeping track of your emails and managing your emails is nuts. And I think I'm sure a lot of people out there do it, but I didn't do it until I stepped into an AD job. Is I store all my emails. I rarely delete an email. I save and I file everything. So I have different files for eligibility. I have a Title IX folder. I was Outlook at Alpha. We have a different system here, but it has the same type of filing system. So I can't tell you how many times that saved me and things. I swear this person sent me an email about this, or someone, I can go back and, okay, that had to do with Title IX. Let me look that up. That had to do with eligibility. Let me look that up. That was a conference thing. Let me look that up. So saving all those emails and moving them from your inbox to those folders so you don't, open your inbox and go, I have, 300 unanswered emails, those type of things. I know some people I work with that have thousands of emails in there. I can't. That would drive me insane. So I probably at least once a week I'm cleaning that up and moving stuff over, and I like to get my emails down to a page, and then I can take a breath and relax, and I feel a lot better about about the upcoming week, so to speak.
Right.
So that's been helpful. The other thing is, when I talked about working from home, whatever your system is, and I've done 3 different things to be able to easily work from home in these 2 jobs. One was I got first at Alfred, I just got remote access from my home computer. So from my home computer, I could get into my school computer, and everything on my school computer I could do from home. So when I was home, I could get right in and do that, because at Springfield, I've been lugging a laptop back and forth when I became the chair for a few years. And I said, let me try not to do that. Yeah. After a while, that wasn't working as well. There was some travel involved when I couldn't bring work with me. So I ended up switching to a laptop at Alfred and bringing it to the office, bringing it home every night, which worked okay. I came in here to Delta. Originally, I was talking to my boss about, and I got approval to change my computer to a laptop if I wanted to do that. And then I actually started using Dropbox. I just keep all my school files in Dropbox. Everything's there. I mean, any pictures or video I keep on my computer, but because I'm not paying for Dropbox, but I'm getting what I get for free. But I store everything there, and I can access it from my computer at home, from my laptop when I'm home. I want to look at something, so I can access it from my phone, my cell phone. So I found that real efficient, and everything updates, because before, I would work on something on my home computer and then forget to save the file or forget to email the file to myself, and I'm looking for that file on my work computer. It's not there. It's sitting on my home computer. Now they're all in Dropbox, and I know I can access them from anywhere. So I like that. And so far, when I travel, I use my personal laptop, but you need to do something to be able to access, because you'll be home working on some project that you brought home with you, and then you're like, oh, but I need this, and that's on my school computer. No, you need to be able to access everything from everywhere, and not doing a commercial for Dropbox. But
that's great advice. Yeah.
Oh, I think, and this is basic. I know everybody does this. You put together a to-do list, and it keeps growing. I remember, for both jobs, I had a little to-do list. It's a half page. It's a page. It's generally now, and I found the same thing at Alpha once I was a few months in, it's 3 pages long, a to-do list. And I try to prioritize. These are the tasks I've started to differentiate between like bigger projects and smaller tasks. So I'll have my list of, these are the minor tasks, of the little things I need to get done over the next week, hopefully. All right, or the next couple weeks. These are the major tasks I'm working on now, and then I'll have a list of, these are the minor things to get to move up on the list at some point. These are the bigger projects to move up on the list at some point. But I'm updating that. Like what I'll do is things come up and I'll write on the 3 pages. I'll write stuff on, but then every week I update the list, update the priorities, and here we go, coming into, usually over the weekend, and then Monday I got my new priority list and I'm ready. And it helps, because if there's too much stuff floating out here, it can become too stressful. Oftentimes before I've updated my list, I'll be like, I got too much to do. But then I'll sit down, and when I do my list and write it out and prioritize, I go, it's not that bad. almost every time. There's actually some apps out there too that I'm starting to toy with that I might start working so that I have it in my cell phone. I can access it there. I haven't shifted to that yet, but I'm thinking of doing that on the to-do list thing too.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, and with the job.
Yeah, you got that right.
So it's great to have those types of tools, and I appreciate you sharing what you're actually doing, because I think that's valuable for people. You
got to watch Burnout too. When you step into this in a type of position, you're excited. You have this new position, and obviously you got to make sure that you do a good job, or they're gonna bounce your butt. So you're gonna be putting in the time, but don't exhaust yourself. Watch out for burnout, because it's easy to do that. To get burnt out in the position, and understand that as time goes on, it will get a little easier. To be honest with you, things were just starting to get a little easier at Alfred when I ended up moving out here. You know what I mean? I'm just starting to see, okay, I'm not bringing as much work home. This isn't as bad. They had added an assistant AD to the staff. That was a huge thing, obviously, to the assistant department and the AD. But then I jumped right back into the fire here, which again was the best thing for me. But understand things will get better. Things will slow down, that type of thing. Yeah. So some of the things that I exercise every day I come to work, just about. Occasionally I have a real early morning meeting and I'll miss it, but I think that helps a lot. Get out there, get a workout in. I like to do it before work so that I come in kind of relaxed and focused and ready to go. Yeah, exercise. So make sure, watch the Burnout. I think exercise is good. Set time for yourself. Every weekend I try to say, okay, I'm going to, this Saturday I'm going to try, or Sunday I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do work. I'm not going to go. There's no games I need to go to. Set some time for yourself. That's important. And explore. You're in a new area. Get out and do the things you like to do. I did that in Alfred, and I'm doing that here, trying to get out and do things. The other little thing I wanted to mention as far as the amount of time you're putting in is, as I said, in your office, I think it's important to have kind of an open door policy, to be accessible, especially early on, because you got to get to know your people. But also you need to get out of the office. You need to know more people on campus than the people in your athletic department. So whether it's getting out to other meetings, getting involved in other things, going to the webinars that come up, or workshops, or whatever it might be. And sometimes, we all know there's webinars and workshops that you don't get that much out of, unfortunately, but you're at least getting to meet other people at the webinars and at those things. So try to get out on your campus, get out in the community. You got to be visible, especially as kind of the new guy in town or new girl in town. Yeah.
Very important. Yes. Yeah.
So actually the last thing, two more things with time just quickly. One is, getting out in the community. I joined, at Alfred, I joined the Lions Club was the big club in town. I joined them in my first year there. Here, I haven't joined anyone yet. It looks like Rotary is probably the better one to join out here. So I'm probably going to be joining Rotary within the next few months here, that type of thing. So that's important to kind of get, and that helps you to get out and meet people in the community and get, so I think that's an important thing to do when you start a new position. The other thing that I wanted to mention, this is somewhat with the time, is budget. You need to early on try to start wrapping your head around the budget, understand how it works. Both places that I stepped into, there was work that needed to be done on how the budget process was. At Alpha, we were transitioning to a different, so we had a lot of different budget needs and that, so I had to put together a whole different budget there, and that was good experience. But then here, when I stepped in, there were things that needed to be worked on the budget. The AD had been part-time here for a few years. So the athletic director here and the dean were kind of taking on a lot of the AD roles, so some of the budget wasn't managed as well as it probably could be. So that was an important thing. And anywhere you go, you got to get your head wrapped around the budget pretty quickly and start to learn that process. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about is just developing relationships with your supervisor and with your staff, with the people that you work with. The first thing I did at both jobs when I stepped in was right away in the first week, I was scheduling meetings with all my staff, and I scheduled, they weren't always this long, but I scheduled 2-hour blocks of time with everyone, and I had a list of, here's the things I'm gonna talk to each person about. I needed to know what their program was like, what their needs were, what their issues and concerns were. I wanted to learn about them personally. Where'd they come from? What's their background? That type of thing. What are their goals, etc. So putting in that time, and it gets you have a lot of things to do, and depending on the size of your staff, trying to put in that much time, spending a couple hours with each of them can add up. But it's crucial because you're not going to really know what's going on until you talk to your people. That type of thing, and you start to learn what's going to be on your plate and what your priority list is going to be after you start meeting with all your. Here's this issue. Okay, got to work on that. This is an important thing, etc. So that was really crucial. Another thing with your with your staff is to learn right away, how are they evaluated? Okay. And what are their goals and expectations for the year? Like I was able to, at Alfred, I was able to tweak it. There was a policy. You had the goals. They were put in like May. I started in July. You were able to look at that and you were able to adjust, so we made some adjustments to everybody's goals in the first few months there at those meetings and changed that here. Here it's a little different right now because of the AD was part-time. The dean is doing most of the evaluations, and me and him I'm going to be transitioning to do some of that later on. So I haven't had to deal with that too much here yet, but I will be. But that's something to really understand. How are your faculty evaluated, or your staff evaluated? And you're usually, are you in a, you got to learn about the union stuff too. I was at a private college most of my career, and I've been in union shops the last two at Alfred State and here. So starting to wrap your head around that is important too. And that part of that, the evaluation is part of the union. The union's going to put that stuff together. You need to know how you should understand that early on. Yes. Every place is different, and it depends on how much support you have and those type of things. But to try to get to regularly scheduled meetings with your staff. There are some coaches that you're going to see weekly or daily because they're the ones that are in your office. But there are other coaches that have needs and concerns, and they're not in your office as much. And if you don't schedule regular meetings with them, you're not going to know what's happening in their program and what you can do to assist them to move in the right direction. So, try to schedule regular meetings however you can do it. I was my first year at Alfred, I was probably doing quarterly, which wasn't too bad. And I wanted to get to at least every couple months, and that type of thing. And same here, I've only done, I've been here 10 months. Right now I'm doing my second meetings with everyone. So it was a little different. I stepped in here in October. Well, not the best time to jump into an AD job. Alfred, I had a little more leeway because I stepped in July 1st. I had more time to kind of transition before the athletes came back and all that. But it's important, I think, to get on a schedule. I'm going to meet with my staff, monthly, bi-monthly, whatever it might be. I think that's important. Yeah. And on your, working with your supervisor, I think that a couple things that are important there. One is that early on, what are the expectations? What are the goals? What do you want me to accomplish this year? Right. That type of thing. And I was lucky enough that, both places I stepped into, my boss sat me down and said, here's some of the things, that we're going to be doing, that you want to be focused on. But it depends on, how connected your boss is to what you're doing. And you may need to be the one that says, hey, can we sit down and put together some goals and expectations, what you expect from me throughout this year. I think along that line, there should be kind of regular meetings with your boss. Both places I've been, it started out, like every other week. And then it moved out to like monthly after that, once you get a few months into it. So, but that's been really helpful, and sometimes you have a boss that's really busy and may not want to do that, but, whatever, spread it out a little more there, but I think you really got to have contact with that person and really get to know what's going on. Also, depending on the situation, you're the expert, you're the athletic expert, you're the AD, they hired you for a reason. So you're going to need to probably educate your boss somewhat about some issues and concerns and things in athletics. You need to do that gradually, and you need to do that diplomatically. But it's something that you're probably going to need to do somewhat.
Yeah. So, Daryl, one thing I always ask all of our guests about is advice they may have for any young up-and-comers, people that want to get into the business, maybe be an athletic director at some point. There are literally hundreds of graduate programs in athletic administration, sport management, what have you. And the reality is there are far more students graduating than there are actual jobs out there. So it's very competitive, and everyone's always looking for some advantage, some advice. So I'm sure you've had conversations like this with students or people that want to advance their careers. What advice do you have for somebody that wants to get into the business and advance their career, maybe ultimately end up in an athletic director's chair one day?
Well, I think a couple things. One is you need to let your boss know that you have those aspirations. Okay. That was my big opportunity. My boss knew that I was looking to move into administration, and he basically stepped out for a sabbatical semester. And that was my first semester as department chair, because he knew, he knew I was looking to get some administrative experience, and he gave me that opportunity. Some people sometimes don't want to tell their boss they're thinking about moving out because they think they'll be treated unfairly. And that can happen, unfortunately, sometimes. But I think if your boss doesn't know, that you have those aspirations, and they can't do the things to try to assist you to get there. They're not just your reference. They can put you in right situation. I know that at my last job at Alfred, the VP that I was working with there, that was my supervisor, he told me he was looking for a president's job, and he'd been working with our president, and he ended up getting a president's job. So you need to let your supervisor know that you have those aspirations, because they'll try to help you. Most of them will try to help you when they get the opportunity. If you're looking to move from coaching to athletic administration, do everything you can to get into leadership roles in your coaching association, in the NCAA, getting in your rules associations, things like that. Whatever you can do to be a leader amongst the coaches, to show that you represent. I came from coaching. I think that coaching is very administrative. There's a lot, aspects to it. A lot of people think, well, you're just throwing the ball out. No, it's a real, and sometimes you're not interviewed. Oftentimes you're not interviewed necessarily by athletic people. I've had interviews where it's all upper administration and there's no coaches on the committee. So people that really don't understand athletics interviewing the athletic director. So they don't understand what a coach does sometimes. But if you can go into more leadership roles in your association, in those things, that will help. The other thing is you got to be persistent, and if you really want to get a job and are looking out there, it's another part-time job searching for jobs. Okay. It's very busy. And you need to prep for your interviews. I did things, I filmed myself and watched it, to see how I was doing. After I came back from interviews, I write down the questions, how I could have answered them better. I actually have a document. It's like 32 pages long of potential questions I could be asked and the answers, that I put together from basically interviews that I went to, and, it depends on what you're looking for. And I've had, depending on where I was in my life, I've had different searches. I had one year, I applied for 80 jobs. I did everything that was out there, I could possibly apply for. And another time I was just interviewing for, the right position, and I applied for a half dozen jobs that year, that type of thing. But you can't get frustrated and just look at it. If you don't get the job, you're getting better at interviewing. You know what I mean? You've gotten experience and you've gotten better at it, that type of thing, and that's helpful. But you just gotta stick with it and do whatever you can. And you can control so much, and sometimes it's circumstances that are going to make the difference too. But if you put yourself in the right place by interviewing enough and doing those type of things, and you'll be ready when the right one comes along.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I think that you've lived it. You've proven that it's effective, and it pays off. So I think those are great words for anybody looking to advance their careers in athletics. Daryl, we've come to the end of our time, so I need to wrap up the show, but I want to thank you. I think what you've been talking about is some very concrete, real practical advice that will help any athletic director, anybody working in athletic administration, or anybody looking to break in. I think the skills that you have and have demonstrated and have talked about are all things that people can benefit from. So I wanted to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day and joining us here.
Well, no, thanks. I enjoyed being here. I enjoyed talking to you. It's good to to discuss these things, and it helps me start thinking about what I need to do to get more efficient too.
Well, it's terrific, and we wish you the best of luck at San Joaquin Delta College in the years ahead. So this has been Dr. Daryl Arroyo, Athletic Director at San Joaquin Delta College in California. Thanks for joining us today on Perspective on Athletics.